Let us attempt an experiment, shall we not? What's up, guys? I love Hunter here, and here to do a breakdown. Well, I was gonna say live reaction, but actually, this is just a breakdown. It's a little chapter review of spyxfamily Mission 108, which is known as, gosh darn it, I literally just read this gosh darn chapter. What was it called? Is it just Mission 108? But with that being the case, I actually already read this chapter. And I also read another chapter that I'm going to be covering today because I want to try something. I want to try limiting myself a little bit. And maybe not necessarily do the quick review format, but at least cover all the things I like in these longer form chapters in a more concise way, because I may or may not be experimenting with something else. And I feel like these two chapters are good to experiment with, especially considering where they're positioned in their respective narratives. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do suit. I have it on me. I keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, this is a nice little chapter. Calm, sweet little chapter. Calm, adorable little chapter. Though, admittedly, I do like what this chapter does on a macro level for the narrative, and I will like what it does on the micro level for these characters in terms of re-amplifying certain things that have been hinted at, confirming certain things that have been hinted at, and even setting up an interesting new character dynamic, admittedly at the cost of poor Anya's little plans. But with that being the case, let's break it down. First things first, we open up with the reading of Melinda. Very specifically, her lack of ability to do a proper reading. And notably, I think this does make sense. I feel like, honestly, she probably could be better if she wasn't consistently so nervous. And of course, if you notice, Melinda's also just kind of been weird, funky, strange throughout the entirety of Spy Family. And now the implications of why she is are pretty darn obvious. I'm not saying it's the most subtle thing that Endo Sensei could have included, but I think the foreshadowing is good and it builds well to this point. And ultimately, seeing the conflict of Melinda is one of the most interesting sort of character dynamics that I'd say Endo Sensei's introduced throughout the entire manga. Like, I mean, obviously you have your main ones, like the conflict of Yor being an assassin, but also a housewife, and Loid being a top secret agent, and also, a dad, and house husband, or not really house husband, they both have jobs, but, and obviously Anya's whole double nature of like, she's just a little regular 6-year-old, but actually she's like 4, and like, I think, what, is she like, I forget the actual number, but I know she's younger than she's actually meant to be. She's like in kindergarten or first grade, when realistically she should still be in preschool, but she lied in order to get adopted. But with that being the case, we have those general character conflicts, but it's amazing to see the character conflict between Melinda, who does genuinely really deeply care for her children, and Damien especially, but ultimately, some about this fellow right here, and obviously not some, this guy's like, unknown monster. At least that's the whole reason Twilight's here. Remember, it was ultimately to get close to Damien Desmond, or Desmond gosh darn it, yeah, Mr. Desmond. I forget his first name anyway. But regardless, it's all to get to him, and seeing the effects he has on his own family is very, very interesting. Obviously, we see it from different perspectives. Melinda has just direct fear of her husband. That has many implications. Once again, we don't know if this is like an Avatar scenario where, she kind of had to marry into Desmond. We don't know if it's just like a real bad scenario where Desmond's, let's just say listens to a lot of a particular type of music from a particular type of artist. But regardless, you can definitely tell that fear Melinda has can definitely override what she wants to be and what she wants to do. She would have loved to see Damien at this event. She would have loved to go on and meet him, but that's just not her place, right? So she can't do it, especially not in her current garb. And she literally asked at the start of the chapter, hey, please don't tell me when I'm here. If you do, I could get in big trouble with her own husband. So like, it's very, very clear that she's in just a really, really bad position. And it's clear that it's affecting her mentally. Obviously, Yor notices it as well to a degree, but it's mainly even Anya who notes like these very tight differences from the grasping to the sweating. Like, it's very clear that her fear is not well hidden to the point where ultimately, Yor reaches out. And it's something that's a little teeny tiny bit interesting in the grand scheme of things. I'm interested to see where this goes as a plot line, considering this is possibly the best and or worst thing that could have happened to our agent Twilight. But with it being the case, that's the first chunk of the chapter. The second chunk of the chapter is kind of just based around the kids and their many different interactions, and ultimately the wrapping up of the festival. Now, I do get this, obviously, like, you weren't gonna have too much time at this festival. And I do think it is adorable to see the kids actually get to properly interact with one another and, like, see their dynamic explored in a more unique way at these different places. Considering, like, it's shockingly enough, despite us having a couple arcs centered entirely around the kids, this is like the most casual and normal it's been, if that makes sense. Like, notably, they're in like intense school situations, or like most recently, like a bus jacking or something like that. Like ultimately, they're in a lot of danger 99.9% of the time. So this is one of the few times where you get to see the whole cast and crew being pretty darn casual. And I like that. I like that. Once again, the whole cast of Spy Family is actually a very, very well written one. I still feel so bad for Endo Sensei. And once again, I'm not sure if that's like a rumor I heard somewhere and it's not actually true, but at least from my understanding, Endo Sensei doesn't even really like this series. Like, he doesn't care for any of the characters. He's just like, I do this because I need to put food on the table. And like, that's real unfortunate, but hey, sometimes you gotta get dispassionate, and with the dispassion, he does a fantastic job writing all of these characters, and especially the kids, and I respect their own little character complexities. And I do like that ultimately Anya, of all characters, someone who struggles with the idea of love and losing her own family, and obviously losing her own mother. Remember, way earlier on in the series, that caused her to literally break down. Upon seeing Damien just like struggle with the idea of, I wish my mom was actually here to be with me and hold my hand as I walk out the carnival. He ultimately can't really say something like that. He's trying to keep up a front. Anya pokes straight on through that. And it's like, your mom loves you too. You aren't that much of an edgelord, I promise you. And we see ultimately that both Yor and Anya double down on this, and it is nice. Once again, Damien, he's a sweet kid. Ultimately, he's a character whose narrative role I think is like it's clear, but still I'm not exactly sure how much longer it's going to take. Because remember, ultimately the main goal is to get as close to Chairman Desmond as possible. But whether that be through Yor, whether that be through the new Melinda collection that's set up at the end of this chapter, whether that be through Damien, I don't know. But obviously Damien's a major character. I think we're just going to see more and more development of him. The question is, when will he be able to overcome this inability to speak to Anya? And also, when will Anya be able to overcome the wall of not being able to speak to herself? Like, it is a real rough situation, but at this point, I actually am hoping that there is going to be some sort of decent major development in terms of that, considering we do get a major development at the end of this chapter. And also, we have Loid, who spent the entire day networking. Hey, once again, I don't necessarily blame the man. It's so easy to forget, considering how much of, I'd say, Loid's been a pretty darn good dad and a pretty good husband, but he still is here on a mission, and ultimately getting all these different connections to all these people who are very high ranking is very, very useful. Heck, I say, be like Loid. If you're in a scenario where you have the opportunity to talk with a whole bunch of very influential people, make sure they remember your name. Make sure they remember your voice, make sure they remember your smile, make sure you're very open and cordial, and make sure you communicate as much as possible. Because trust me, it'll only make your life better in the long run. The more people you know, the more people have a positive opinion of you, and how those people are, you're always going to be in a better spot. It's, especially in the modern day, it's much less about what you know and who you know. But with that being the case, we see Loid got all that down and done, but in the end, he still does check. As when Anya reaches out to him, Loid says, "Oh, did you enjoy the festival?" And Anya reveals that yes, indeed, she did have a whole lot of fun, from getting her mask, to talking with Melinda, to spending time with the other kids. It's all wonderful. However, with it being the case, the end twist of this chapter is that earlier on in this very chapter, by the way, Yor ended up recommending Loid to Melinda in particular. Like, hey, I see you're kind of having a couple of mental struggles here, but don't worry, we can help you out. Or at least I know a guy who can help you out. My husband. You know, he's a psychiatrist, he's a general hospital, he kind of built like that. He could help you out. And Melinda actually does come here. And there's a funny little joke worked in here, because ultimately, remember, the whole introduction that Yor and Loid even had to each other was in a very drastic action scenario. And thusly, she does believe to a certain degree that what she saw of his professional life as a psychiatrist involves physical violence. And thusly, it is funny to see Melinda worry about physical violence yet still show up in the first place, which may have negative implications of itself. But once again, Endo Sensei is very good at underlying factors and being like, hey, you know what this could apply? And I'm like, I mean, go ahead, big dog. But that's a scary implication laid down there. With that being the case, the patient is the former First Lady. She is here, she's meeting with Loid, and they are going to forge a connection. Now, the real question is, how is this going to develop? Obviously, I don't think this is going to be an immediate link to Desmond. Obviously, that's what Loid would want, because he's been itching and scratching and feeding to get as close to Desmond as possible. But I think through interacting with Melinda, he's going to figure out how far the gap is between her and her husband anyway. And then realize that ultimately this may not be the best thing, and then probably actually double down and invest in just taking care of her and working on her self-esteem and her ability to communicate and her ability to exist within the same realm as her husband. And the reason I say exist in the same realm as her husband is because clearly she's not even in that point. She's genuinely terrified of him. And I think Loid is going to have to figure that out. Now, obviously Loid is not like his adoptive daughter. He doesn't have mind reading powers, but I think there is definitely an interesting way to build a proper character dynamic. Especially considering now, after this, Melinda will have met all of the major speaking members of the Forger family, right? She'll have a dynamic and have met Anya. She already has a connection with Yor, and now she's having a connection with Loid. And I think we're building this narrative heavily around her to where all these different characters, but all these different characters who are connected to the same point, essentially, as in the Forger family. They all met Melinda, they all forged opinions on Melinda, and they all have their own different insights to Melinda. So I'm interested to see how Loid's insights develop and how he decides to deal with it. Because obviously we know he tailors his reactions and how he deals with certain assets, quote unquote, depending on what he can get out of them. So I think the most interesting thing that this sets up is seeing how Loid is going to deal with Melinda, deal with her issues, and see if he can actually genuinely help at all, and what that help could possibly mean for the completion of his mission. Because it could go absolutely crazy, could go absolutely bonkers, or it could go nowhere at all. Such is the beauty of Spy Family, where we just never know. However, that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Overall, if I had to give this chapter a rating, I would actually probably give it, considering I have no real issues with it, and I think it does a lot. Like, it is a pretty chunky chapter. I believe there was a break. It was a while between 107 and 108. I remember because I was waiting forever for 108 to drop after I reviewed 107, because that was the first time I hopped back into Spy Family. But that being the case, it was a while, so it is a pretty chunky chapter, and I can't say there's a single page wasted. I think the characterization of all the characters involved is perfect. I think the character development for all characters involved is perfect. I think the interactions that are being set up for the future are perfect. I'm interested to see this whole crew again too, like these real pseudo parents of Damien, or like the pseudo parent of Damien. I'm interested to see how that plays out in the long run too. This ultimately is a wonderful setup chapter, but also a wonderful character work chapter that hard confirms some things that have kind of been floating around in the manga previously, but just hadn't been hard nailed down. And hey, sometimes I like a good chapter just like that. So this is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. But what do you guys think? Please let me know in the comment section down below. If you're all the way to the end of this video, please leave psychiatric. Actually, no, we'll do psychiatry. I was about to say psychiatric, but then again, maybe that's a little too easy. But psychiatry in the comment section down below. I did thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any news that come to the channel. Also, I'm going to have a picture down below where you can support me for as low as $1, and things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reactions to the series I have to review, have free reactions of all my videos, and when you come to a $50 Patreon or a $50 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also do leave a link to my Ko-Fi and description down below where you can drop 5 minutes for a short video, 20 minutes for a long video, or any views at all. The support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Greyhound, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Super Flame Zero, Brandon Payne, Glacier XE, G Prosper, Planet Crone, and Zeta. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our line art tier patrons: Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kirai Void, Kevin Encarnacion, Igneal Lind, and A+A. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our ink tier patrons: Fine, Austin Wimberly, A Uchiha, Yuki Ally, and Carlo Alaimo. Then I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. And then I'd like to give a big old gargantuan thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Overlord Zero, Waki Munoz, and iDemokami. And I'd like to give a legendary, top of the line, sublime, sweet mother of mercy, super slopping, juicy scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our That Guy with a Pencil tier patron, Calvin Elder.